I'll, I'll call this meeting of the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors to order. Roll call, please, Mr. Veeder.
Hall.
Here.
Leyland.
Here.
Little.
Here.
Jelka.
Here.
Schwartz.
Here. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll entertain a motion on the agenda as received
So
or
moved.
amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 The agenda is approved. We'll now move on to the budget work session. It's discussion, consideration of all aspects of the fiscal year 25 Blackhawk County budget.
All right. And engineering is going to start us out today. And I think we're going to be tag teaming a little bit on the presentation, so we're going to have to switch back and forth.
Do you want to put that purpose?
Sure.
You put your slides up first, Michelle.
Okay.
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
Kathy Nicholas, engineer. Before I get started, I wanted to introduce the people that I've had accompany me today. We have Allison Roby with us from the department today. She is our financial analyst, a budget analyst. Wayne Even, our maintenance superintendent. And then our brand-new road foreman, Dale Schilling, county employee of 30 years, just last month, actually. So I just wanted to thank them for all their work. And also Ryan Brennan has been a tremendous help on the budget as well. He is at training today, so he is not able to join us. So I just want you to know we do take our budgeting very seriously. We've spent a lot of hours working with Michelle, preparing numbers and handouts for you today. So just to get started, our purpose, of course, in the engineer's office is to provide a safe and efficient, reliable, sustainable transportation network to the residents of Blackhawk County and those who visit Blackhawk County. And we have mainly two areas that we're responsible for. Our responsibilities would be engineering and maintenance. Of course, the engineering side of the house, most of that takes place up here in the engineer's office. We are responsible for designing, preliminary engineering, constructing, administering projects, our contract work, the work of our bridge crew. That's one of our main jobs. We also have a lot of historical data that we have collected over the years, monument preservation, corner sections, a lot of survey information that we collect and keep for historical purposes for ourselves and, of course, for the general public. Another one of our jobs is to issue permits of all types, oversized, overweight, tile permits, and, of course, utility permits that allow our utility companies throughout the state, throughout the area, to install permanent services for our residents. And then developing a 5-year plan is another very important part of our mission in the engineer's office. Our maintenance responsibilities include maintaining our large transportation system here in Blackhawk County. That includes removing snow, placing gravel, replacing culverts, mowing, roadside vegetation management, all sorts of activities throughout the year. And then finally on this page we have an overview of the projects that we've completed in the last 3 years. It would be we continue to resurface roadways, although that number of miles that we are able to complete every year is slowly declining just due to prices going up, higher than inflation, higher than the gas tax being collected, etc. And then, of course, we continue to replace bridges as needed. So moving on and looking at our revenue. Is this too big, that the box?
Got to
here?
get the box out of there, yeah.
Oh,
How do I do that?
I don't know why that turned into a box like that. Might work better if you could put that on. Okay, that works. Never mind.
Okay, just quickly going through our revenue. Of course, our largest source of revenue comes from the road use tax fund every year, and that, of course, is money received when people purchase gasoline, diesel, pay licensing fees, registration fees to the state of Iowa. That has continued to go up every year. You can see that we are estimating, the DOT is estimating for us that we're going to receive $4.5 million in the road use tax fund for FY25. Other sources of revenue for us would be some of those smaller amounts, $1,500, $2,400. We are budgeting that. Those come from agreements that we have with some of the other municipalities or incorporated areas here in Black Hawk County to plow snow on their roads that are adjacent to our jurisdiction roads. It's just easier for us to pick up that short section of roadway for them because we're there plowing our roads, so we have assessed them a fee in some situations. Moving on, we received some state grants for the IRVM program. For example, we're anticipating receiving a state grant for one of the pieces of equipment that I'll be showing you a little later on. Another large source of funding that I skipped over is Time 21. The DOT is estimating for us that we would receive $537,000 in FY25 as revenue from that Time 21 fund. Another source of revenue for us would be trip permits, and these would be the only permits that we receive money for would be our oversize and overweight permits, and those, of course, are received by carriers who are moving oversized or overweight vehicles on county roads here in Black Hawk County. Our largest source of those trip permits comes from the Warren Transport facility out on Elk Run Road, where they're moving John Deere tractors throughout from that facility throughout the state and the country. We are anticipating that permit funding will go up a little bit. In talking with them, they would like to increase the number of tractors that are being produced and moved out of that facility. So we're anticipating a slight increase for next year for our trip permits. And then other items, we receive money from when we dispose of equipment or property through online sources. That's where some of the sale of capital assets funding would come into play there in that line. So that gives us a revenue total of $5.26 million. I should also say another source of revenue for us in this budget would be property taxes, and that will show up in a couple more slides, so I'll refer to that then. So moving on, lower in the page would be our salaries and benefits, and those have been calculated in this budget by our human resources and our finance director. I will say that we have had a number of higher paid employees retire in the last year, and we have had, of course, those jobs have been taken by people who are lower paid, or we have not been able to fill several positions in the last year. So overall, we've seen a little bit of a decrease in wages throughout the year, but we're also then, of course, increasing that just due to some of the results of the compensation study and the proposed union increases for this coming year. I should also say that we have also been able to transfer some of our salaries to the local option sales tax fund, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that gives us a net increase of 3.12% in our salaries for next year. Are there any questions on this page before we move to the next page? Okay, in looking at our operating expenses, I wanted to spend a little bit of time telling you about areas that have increased or decreased by 25% for FY25 versus FY24. So going down to the list, we have 0438, that would be office supplies and purchases. Over the last few years, we are just not printing as much, not using as much paper. We have not had the need to order as many office supplies. Our technicians have tablets. They all have laptops. They are utilizing those more out in the field. Consequently, our office repairs and equipment we've budgeted 50% less for next year. We have a fairly new copier. We just don't need to be budgeting any money for those repairs. Right now, it's working well, and we don't anticipate that to change. Moving on down to the list in minor office furniture, 0550. Last year, we increased the budget because we knew we wanted to get computers to our out shops, and we've been working on that. So we put in more money last year, so we've accomplished a lot of that. A lot of that was with the use of free furniture or furniture from other departments that we didn't have to purchase. This year for FY25, we felt that we can decrease that portion of our budget because we've gotten much of that accomplished. We do need to buy furniture, however, for our new shop foreman that I'll be speaking about. And moving on to the next item, 0552, we showed a decrease of 46% in minor computer equipment because last year we were able to get computers for most of the shops. We're expecting a decrease in that line item for this year, although we still need to purchase some computer, one for our new road foreman and shop foreman. So there are pieces of equipment that we do continue to need to purchase. Software, that is actually increased by 118% to $57,000. A lot of that request is simply because we are now being reallocating our subscriptions to this software line item. For example, we have subscriptions for our phones, for our CAD, our AutoCAD program, the spray logger, which you'll hear about. These are all types of subscriptions that continue to increase every year. We are actually also allocating $25,000 in this budget for a fleet management system and also $24,000 for radio software upgrades for our radio system. Moving down to safety and protective items, we're showing a decrease of 35% because last year's budget we purchased a new guardrail system for our bridge crew, so we don't have that. That was just a one-time expense, so we don't need that. That item was about $6,000 or $7,000. We don't need that item. However, we do need to continue to purchase personal protective equipment for all of our employees, so that would be our usual being able to purchase our usual allotment of that type of equipment. Moving down through engineering supplies, that would be 0593 item. We're showing a decrease of 50% in that line item to $1,500. This is item that is used by our construction inspectors, our survey techs, such as spray paint, lath, tape, and ribbon. We have a good supply right now, so we feel like that dollar amount, the $1,500, can get us by for FY15, or 25, excuse me. Licenses and permitting. This item has decreased by 38% from last year. Some of this has to do with us reallocating our CAD subscriptions to the software line item. However, we still need to buy licenses and permits when we, for example, get a stormwater permit. We need to pay a permit fee to the Iowa DNR. For those permits, we have to license our fuel tank every year, so we do have minor fees that we need to pay every year. That service charge line item, those would be fees that we pay to Waterloo to use their fueling system. They are charging us about $9 a month now, so we budgeted $125. And then machine equipment, vehicle rental and leasing, that's in 0695. We're showing an increase of 30.7% for that line item. This would be cover items to when we rent heavy equipment, for example, our fall ditch cleanouts. We need to continue to do that every year. The price of renting excavators continues to increase because the price of equipment is continuing to increase. We also occasionally need to rent a stump grinder. So all those costs are going up, unfortunately. And then the last item I wanted to tell you about was 1046, which would be our land maintenance supplies. line item, this is our roadside biologist needing to purchase herbicides. He has developed a very robust program now and has a good idea of how much chemical it will take to get a third to a half of this county sprayed every year. So those costs are going up, and we anticipate that that cost staying higher for the future, just due to his having a better idea of the chemicals he needs. Just very briefly, I did just want to bring your attention to a few of the line items where we spend a lot of money every year, and there's 5 of those where we spend over $100,000. The first one would be 0520, which would be construction materials, where we budgeted $186,000. We are decreasing slightly from that over last year. However, it is still a lot of money. And this is where we fund some of our bridge crew work, replacing culverts, replacing bridges, smaller bridges, etc. The next line item would be fuel and lubricants, which is 0575. Another large item for us where we spend $347,000. That one is often difficult to budget for. We don't know what the future prices of gasoline or diesel will be. Sometimes we, look at the futures. We're not experts in that area, so we're continuing to leave that approximately the same as it was last year, with only a 1% increase. And then professional services is remaining about steady to what it was compared to last year. However, we are budgeting this year for $270,000 to start some preliminary engineering, preliminary design work on a new shop. And then we are also budgeting a few other items, such as $60,000 for the Northeast Industrial Access Study that would provide the environmental work on that study. So that would be our portion to participate in that study. Another large item for us is machine and equipment repair. We are showing a 20% decrease, but nevertheless, we do anticipate spending upwards of $250,000 on repairing trucks, motor graders, all of our equipment. Sometimes we can repair it in-house, sometimes we have to send it out. So we're still spending a lot of money in that item. And then road and asphalt supplies. This is of course, one of our largest categories. So this is where we budget for our rock, our spot rock, all the re-rocking we do on the gravel road system would be in this line item. This would also be where we have our salt is coming from this budget item. Gravel prices have remained fairly steady. They are increasing maybe 5% a year or less than that, but our rock salt has increased by about 10% for FY25. We do get that on contract through the Iowa DOT, but they're estimating we're budgeting $10 a ton more for that rock. Are there any questions on our operating expenses for FY25?
Kathy, yeah, maybe just on the professional services, and it's just, maybe I didn't catch all that. You
Yes.
mentioned that larger category, and it was for the engineering costs as well as the assessment, I think, of the, I was trying to think of the corridor, or the.
Oh, the Northeast Industrial Access Study?
Yes. And what else is included in that? What are some of the other things included in that?
So,
Or, I'm sorry.
you want to help me out with that, Allison?
Pavement mark, okay.
List out here. A lot of lines to remember.
I knew there were, that's why I just thought, I just were curious for some of them, not all, thanks.
Yeah, like our,
The larger.
Pavement markings, our crack sealing, our grouting, anything that we have to pay on the engineering side for maintenance of professional services that we can't do ourselves, it would fall into this category.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else you can?
No, that's good. Yeah, those are the big ones, that's all, yeah, thank you.
This might be a question for Michelle, I'm not sure, but FY '22 and '23, the actuals additional funds, 2 million. Could you tell me how much of those 2 years were undesignated? I know that this budget gets a little tricky because you've got some designated and you got projects that aren't necessarily closed by the end of the fiscal, but just trying to get a feel for, over the last, well, in 22 and 23, we had about 3 million that went in for additional funds, but I don't know how much of that was undesignated.
I don't know that off the top
Okay.
of my head. We probably are changing our budgeting a little bit. Sometimes with this type of department, if there's a lot of snow, they're doing snow removal. If there's not snow, they're doing maintenance. So it's hard to balance sometimes the maintenance expense versus snow removal expense. So, but yes, there's a lot of fluctuation in that one.
Okay. And then the other question I had is if it would be possible to get just the historical data on what we budgeted for FY 22 and 23 for that road use taxes. I get that the state sort of makes the recommendation and the projection, but I'm just interested to see how far off, or if that is far off.
It is off.
Yeah.
It's been off, particularly during the pandemic. That's what's really hard to predict right now. It's going to continue to be that far off.
Yeah.
The DOT does tend to budget super
So-
conservatively.
Last year, I showed you a graph of that, the actual versus the received amount from the road use tax, excuse me, the budgeted versus the actual from the road use tax fund. And last year, it was about, a 10-year average was $335,000, where the actual is coming in $335 more than what they tell us in the fall of each year. I threw in FY 23 numbers, and then that number is now going up to about $350,000 a year, where we're receiving more than what they're telling us to budget for in the fall.
Thank you.
And the DOT's pretty firm in telling you, suggesting that you don't budget highly for that because it is completely dependent on highway use and fuel use, basically. So, yeah, I'm amazed at how far off they've been, actually.
Okay, moving on to in the same budget, several other categories we are proposing would be this 1,100, the first line there, the computer equipment, that for $13,000. That would be to replace our CAD computers. We've told you that those computers cost approximately $4,000 per unit. So I think we are budgeting to replace 3 of those this coming year. And then our construction and maintenance capital, this is where I've given you a few slides of my own that if you could let me switch to that.
Find my little.
Corey, how do I get that?
Full screen?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, this is an overview of our proposed capital equipment purchases for FY '25. You can see it's $1.24 million. I just thought this was worthy of discussion for each item. Here's just an overview. So, of course, this would be, we do have a routine need to replace our motor graders and our dump trucks. Of course, we use those vehicles just about every day. That is what does much of the work on the county road system here in Black Hawk County. We are budgeting to replace 1 single axle dump truck, Those are now being budgeted at $225,000. Those have increased substantially over the last 5 years. Some of it's been supply chain issues. Of course, we would say the caveat would be we're not sure when we will receive trucks in particular, but nevertheless, we are budgeting this for FY25. We would have a trade-in with an older 2002 Sterling is the make or the model of the dump truck we would trade in. It has about 100,000 miles on it, so it's not an extreme amount of miles, but it's a 22-year-old truck. The body's rusting, and it needs to be replaced. It's one of our spares right now. Another spare item for us would be this motor grader here in the photo. We are asking to be able to replace this motor grader, move through the line, a new motor grader, get rid of this one, and push another one to a spare in its place. So this machine that we would trade in would be a 2006 with over 10,000 working hours on it. We are budgeting a new motor grader from John Deere, a 772 motor grader, for almost $500,000. Those have also gone up significantly over the last 5 years. In the future, we will be looking at more counties are going towards rebuilding their motor graders. This is something we've become more aware of just recently in the last couple years. Murphy Tractor is possibly going to start rebuilding a motor grader, and by rebuilding it, that means depending on the level of rebuild you want, you can get these rebuild where there's rebuilding all the hydraulic system, the electrical systems, replacing just about everything, rebuilding the motors. You can have the machine sandblasted and repainted, so it would come back to you as virtually a brand new machine, and with a good warranty. So we are considering those options in the future.
Kathy, this is Tom.
Yes.
Are any of the counties, I know there's cities, I think Waterloo's one of them. Is there any of the counties leasing their motor graders
Yes,
through a lease program?
there are. For example, the first one that comes to mind, I believe, is Story County, and I believe they're leasing a good part of their motor grader fleet.
And Tom, Waterloo, the reason they lease them is because they only use them for snow removals. They only use them for 4 months out of the year. And that's, I think if they would have used them year round, that they might have revisited that decision.
We haven't considered the leasing option at this point in time.
Is there any worth to the used ones? Do we trade them in?
Yes, we always have a trade-in when we get a new motor grader. There's good resale for motor graders on the market. And Allison, do you know what would be a trade?
We got $96,000. The last motor grader, whatever, 2 years ago.
So the last motor grader we traded in, we got $95,000.
After, if we replace this one, when would the next one be up for replacement?
That will be that's on our 5-year plan, and I don't think we have one.
Just wondering when the next motor grader would come up due after this one.
We're gonna be good for a little while, so I think it'd be 2029.
2029.
And we'll go through those capital sheets here in a few minutes too.
Then I was really interested in that idea of rebuilding them, just because, I mean, it's environmentally responsible too, and
Yes.
fiscally responsible.
We will look at that. We've gotten some preliminary numbers from Dallas County, recently had one rebuilt last fiscal year. It's still costing $350,000 to $400,000 to rebuild a machine for a full rebuild with a 10,000-hour warranty, but that's still possibly savings of $100,000. So we are definitely interested in learning about those options. Okay, moving on to trailers. We have a need for 2 different trailers this fiscal year, new trailers, new to us. The first trailer we are proposing would be a used trailer, and this trailer would be a heavier duty, a 3-axle trailer that would be used by our bridge crew. And one of the reasons we are proposing to purchase this trailer now is that I will explain our bridge building process here as best I can, and Wayne can help me out if I have any questions. So when we are building our bridge beams by the bridge crew, at some point, we need 2 cranes. We currently have 2 cranes. We have our newer Manitowoc crane, that's our large crane that goes out on site to build the bridge. We also have we have another crane that sits back at Longfellow that loads the beams onto a trailer to haul them out on site. When the Manitowoc, the larger crane, gets out on site, there are counterweights that sit on the back end of this crane. Those have to come out on site on a trailer. At some point in time, we are no longer going to have our American crane at Longfellow to load these counterweights on the trailer. By having another trailer, we can use our Manitowoc to load the counterweights onto this newer trailer. They would sit there and they would get hauled onto site, out on site after the Manitowoc is there, and then they could be offloaded by the Manitowoc. So at some point, we're going to need 2 trailers because we will no longer have 2 cranes. If you have any questions at any point in this conversation, please ask. We can also, when we are setting the beams are the precast by our bridge crew at Longfellow. When it comes time to set those beams, because the old structure has been demolished, we can load them onto this new trailer. They'll be able to haul that. We can use the new trailer to haul steel. We have long pieces of steel that are used out on site. We have H-pile that is used for the foundation, for the pilings of the bridge. Those could be used or could be hauled out with this with this new used trailer. Am I forgetting anything?
So the transportation costs of back and forth is part of the issue with this, right?
Just,
Or no?
if our old crane, when it goes down, I really don't wanna stick any more money into it, cause the old crane is, I think, early 60s.
It's been here as long as Wayne and I have been here, over
Yes.
30 years we've had it.
So it's getting to the point where we're no longer gonna be able to use it. And then we need this other trailer because when we're dismantling and putting the crane together, we need to set our Manitowoc, you can turn it and you can set the counterweights right on the trailer. And, but when the Manitowoc is being disassembled, we don't have that option. We need the second crane or this trailer.
And we should also say that Emerson Crane has assisted us in the past. You know, they're fairly close to us out there on Wagner Road.
Mm-hmm.
However, they do charge us, is it $2,000? They
Yes,
do.
I'm not sure.
They do charge us every time they come out to our site to load up the counterweights and or the bridge beams. In the past, we've used them before we had the new Manitowoc. So there are costs incurred by us if we don't have this other trailer.
How frequently does that, you said about $2,000 a pop, roughly how many times a year are we looking?
Well, to have Emerson come in,
Yeah,
we've been able, with our 2 cranes and our newer Manitowoc, we have been able to do it ourselves.
okay.
So we hope to continue that. However, we will still, when we're loading decks at our shop, if the American crane goes down, we will still have to have Emerson come in and load the decks. Which I think this summer is gonna be one bridge we're doing, so we'd only require them to come one time.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so moving on to the other trailer is we have 2 skid loaders, and we need a way to move these skid loaders around, especially now that we have a roadside biologist. He is often wants to be out when he's not spraying, when the conditions aren't good for spraying. He would like to be out mowing with the skid loader, for example, or having someone else mow. Our skid loaders have various attachments on them. That we have a little mini head that can mill asphalt. We have mowers that can fit on the front of these skid loaders. And if we have a large amount of brush, that's a good way to keep that down, is to have the skid loader out in a ditch, for example, mowing. So we need a way to transport our multiple skid loaders around the county. Right now we have one trailer that's suitable for this, and another one would make us more efficient. We'd be able to go different places with the use of multiple trailers. Am I getting all that?
Yes.
In the past, we have rented trailers to help us do this. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to a truck. Our superintendent currently has a truck that's it's a 2021. He already has 130,000 miles on it, so Wayne drives around a lot. So it's time to put his truck in the back, or, move that into our rotation and get a new truck for him. We are proposing to go to a 3/4 ton truck at this time, because in his position, both of the superintendent and the foreman have to deliver diesel fuel to our equipment, especially in winter months when they're out plowing. Then they don't have to waste time coming back and forth to LaPorte or Hudson to the co-op to get fuel. So it's just easier to go out and refuel them. There's a tank in both of their trucks. In that tank, the weight of the tank on a half-ton truck takes its toll on the vehicle. The springs in particular, we've had to replace springs quite often in the superintendent's truck over the years. Another reason would be in the winter months when the superintendent's out driving around, that truck becomes heavy, becomes caked with ice and snow. And so that's another toll that is taking on this half-ton pickup truck. We would like to order a new truck and get a 3/4 ton truck for that position.
Are they diesel trucks, Kathy?
Mine is, Dwayne's not.
So the superintendent's, Wayne's, has typically been a gasoline-powered truck, and the foreman's has typically been a diesel truck. We would propose to trade in number 97, which is a 2006 Ford 150 with 112,000, rusty body and frame. So are there any questions on this item? Okay, moving on to tires. Let's talk about tires. Changing tires, balancing tires. We're currently able to balance and change some of our tires. You all know that the rims, the wheels of vehicles are getting larger. Just on light-duty passenger cars and trucks, we're all seeing larger rims, increase 18, 19, 20-inch rims and tires. Our light-duty pickup trucks, we're experiencing the same thing, of course, so we are no longer, with the equipment we have, we're no longer able to change some of those tires just due to the increased diameter of the wheels. So we would like to get a newer tire balancing machine that would be able to balance all of our wheels and tire combinations, from light-duty pickup trucks to tractors to motor graders and dump trucks. These are two separate machines that we're talking about. The tire changing, we have the same issues. If we have a large For example, if we have a large light-duty truck rim, if we can't change it, then we have to take it over to Fixed Tire to get it dismounted and then bring it back, and or we would have them put the new tire on it, excuse me. So by getting a new tire changing machine, we really see an advantage here with some of the labor that our service mechanic has to do. We change over probably 100 tires a year. He has to do that manually right now on many of our tires. That means he has to break the bead with a really long breaker bar, and that can be a lot of work. He has to pick it up and put it on a device and then break that bead manually. The newer tire changers, all of that is done automatically now. You can roll the tire over to the machine. I don't think I have the right photo here for the tire changing machine, but it allows it to be picked up, rolled over and to the machine, and it picks it up automatically, and then it mechanically breaks the bead of between the rim and the tire. A new machine would allow that to be done automatically for every type of tire wheel combination that we have. So we're showing that being budgeted at $50,000. Do you have any questions on that?
About how much time do you think that would save? As far as when you say the individual is taking a considerable amount of time, you could do this a lot faster, right?
Yes, it's gonna save a lot of time, but also, like she says, our mechanic is having to bend over, pick up grader tires, truck tires, use them all, swing them all, and at some point in time, we're gonna end up with a back injury or whatever, so we just feel this is also a much safer way of getting it done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, two others, mid-sized pieces of equipment would be our hydromulcher. This is a photo of our current hydromulcher, and we acquired this from the Conservation Department in 1985. So we've had it, you know, a long time now, but we know it wasn't brand new when we got it. So we're not sure of the age of the machine. It just shows up in our inventory as acquiring it in 1985. We use a hydromulcher for all of our areas that we need to go and seed that's too much work to do by hand. For example, if we have 1 acre or half an acre, 2 acres of bare ground, we need to be in compliance with our permits. Of course, we need to get that covered up and grass established and growing. We would put native seed, for example, or ryegrass, those types of seed we can put into this machine, mix it with the mulch, and then it broadcasts that onto the bare ground. That's the purpose of this machine. Griffin our roadside biologist, has a lot of goals to get more areas in native plantings. We are able to get a grant through the Iowa DOT IRVM program for a machine, a new hydromulcher. We think we'll be successful in getting that grant just because it's been a few years since we've applied. We have a new biologist, a new program, so we're thinking we're going to be successful in getting some funding. We have budgeted this at $70,000. And then our spray logger system, that's something else that would be used by our roadside biologist. It's a way to automatically keep track of what types of chemicals you're spraying out on the roadside, how much you're spraying, where you're spraying it. It allows the operator, it would allow Griffin to come back into the office and be able to sync with our GIS system. We could have maps of where, just like I said, what's been sprayed and where it's been sprayed and quantities, and we'd have good records. In case we get a complaint, we have to appeal or respond to IDOLs. If we get a complaint, we have to be, accountable for our spraying activities. So this would allow us to keep a more automated system, and that's being budgeted at $8,000. Any questions? Okay, our last item, and this falls into our building improvements category. Our shop at LaPorte City was built in 1996, so it's 28 years old, but the vapor barrier between the insulation and the interior of the roof and the walls is starting to disintegrate. And possibly, maybe that's just due to, these pictures were taken close to on the ceiling. You can see that just above the doors, the exterior doors. So perhaps it's the exhaust when the guys start up the trucks. Maybe maybe it's just age. We're not real sure, and this isn't our area of expertise per se. We got a bid from Modern Builders back in 2022 to do this type of work. They suggested that we need to remove the walls and the roof, the metal, the sheet metal from the walls and the roof. Because as you know, that insulation sits behind the steel support systems, the wall support. So the way to get at that is to take off the exterior roofing and wall system. They gave us a price tag of almost $200,000. We also know that the ventilation system inside the shop needs to be improved. We need new ceiling fans, maybe some other improvements to the ventilation system. We budgeted this at $250,000. We're hopeful that it will be less than that, but we wanted to give a good estimate. Are there any questions about this?
When you had the estimate in '22, or when you talked to them, is that about what they estimated at that time too, or did they provide that?
They did provide us an estimate in 2022. Yeah, September of 2022.
Okay, and
sorry,
that's where the numbers we have, or did we build in something for an increased cost? Today's market.
Like I said, the estimate from them back then was not quite $200,000, so we're hopeful that $250 is enough to do this work.
Okay.
Well, we know that we need to take care of our buildings, and this building needs to last another 30 or 40, 50 years. So clearly we need to do something soon about this, what's going on in that building.
And the 250 included the bigger fans as well?
Yes, yes. Based on what we know today, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're back to you, Michelle. What do I need? Thank you.
Did you want to talk about the transfers? You'd mentioned that earlier,
yes.
about the property
Yes.
taxes.
So you can see there in the middle, you can see that these are the funds being transferred to us by you, 100%. The code requires that you give us at least a minimum of 75% in order to get full road use tax fund monies. You're funding us at 100% in the general basic fund and 95% in the rural basic fund for an additional $3.79 million. That brings our total revenue in this budget to just over $9 million. We're estimating that we will have $66,000 going back to the fund balance based on these projected numbers on salaries, expenses, and of course the DOT revenue projections.
I go on to local option.
Yeah. Or FTEs, I suppose.
I think I forgot to cut that chart up. Oh, here it is, sorry.
Okay. No,
Apologize
thank you.
about that.
Thank you. So our FTEs, we are proposing to keep constant at 42.06. I did want to comment about this because we are making some changes. In the office, we've decided that we are not going to replace a civil engineering technician. Those employees, those technicians are very difficult to find at this time. And we're finding that the market rate is a little bit higher than, we're not paying as well as private industry is right now for technicians. We've become very efficient with CAD over the years. We've computerized the inspection process. The DOT makes a lot of our daily inspectors reports. All that is done now on a tablet. We're getting efficient, and this is what happened with our administrative staff. We were able to reduce by one over the last, in my 15 years here. In my 15 years, I've seen us really get very efficient at our engineering processes. We're 1 or 2 years ahead in our design for our roadway projects, our bridge projects, which is good. We're outsourcing more work due to preventative maintenance projects that we're doing, rather than, like I said, we're just not able to afford to do as many resurfacing miles right now, so we're only doing one resurfacing a year. So that's just a little bit less workload, as well as us becoming more efficient. We feel that we'll be fine with the technician number that we have right now. We do intend to hire a summer employee every year, because there can be a lot of hours spent behind a paver, and by having a summer intern, that helps our staff reduce their, the number of hours they need to spend out there as well. I am proposing to add a shop foreman. I think I sent you a paper about the need for a shop foreman. I would like us to have more constant oversight at the Longfellow shop. We also need to get more efficient. The same way we've gotten efficient up here, we're slowly getting more efficient at the shop, but I really like to step that up by getting a fleet management system. We've been told by our finance director as well as the auditor that we need to be more accountable with our inventory, and a fleet management system will help us get there. There are a lot of new technologies that we need to be taking advantage of on that side of the house, on the roadway, secondary road side of the house. So I think a shop foreman can really benefit us out at Longfellow. And particularly if we are able to build a new shop, they can have a presence out there as that's going on, and help with some of those decisions in building a new shop. Are there any questions about the FTEs? Okay, thank you.
So the other fund we're using for secondary roads is local option tax. If you remember last year, we talked about the fact that we didn't need the local option to retire debt service on road bonds anymore. So we opened a local option tax fund, deposited a few months worth of revenue last year and which created a beginning balance so that they have some cash flow, because their construction comes at more at certain times a year, and you need cash in the bank before we get it, because we only receive the local option tax monthly. Our referendum says that half of the receipts are for roads, so I have kind of put a reconciliation at the top of this showing half of it going into this fund. And then Kathy can tell you how they're going to use it.
So part of our money, like I said, since we are now going to shift some of the salaries that our bridge crew, when they're working on our small bridges, we're going to shift some of those salaries to this line here, about $108,000. We are able to pay for a few other items with the local option sales tax, such as right-of-way. We have a project coming up where, well, we have multiple projects throughout the year. Even our small bridge projects, we need to acquire small slivers of right-of-way. If it's associated with a construction project, we will be able to utilize local option sales tax for some of that right-of-way purchasing. Settlement and fines really comes from, like, if we pay someone in these right-of-way negotiations, if there's a fence, we pay them for their fence, essentially. We pay people for trees. So some of that money is here in settlement and fines. The big item, of course, would be construction itself. So at $1.339 million, we are proposing to pay for bridges, small bridges. We have some miscellaneous bridge work we would like to do. We have a Brandon Road project. I've told you about a ditch project, a ditch reconstruction project we have along Brandon Road. So these types of work, we are going to be using this local option sales tax to pay for construction of these projects. So down here at the bottom, we're estimating that we will not spend $411,000 of that fund in FY25. So that will allow us to accumulate some money in the local option sales tax fund. Are there any questions about that fund?
You can carry that over from year to year.
Yes, that's one of the
From the fund
reasons
balances.
I've set it up the way it is, so that the balance that's maintained in that fund will be available for road construction.
Future.
We'll transfer the other 50%. We can talk about that more, but your past practice has been to deposit that into the rural services fund. So at this time, I'm assuming you want to continue to do that. So that will not have a carryover balance because it will be used. But this, for construction projects, will be able to be carried forward.
Are there any limitations on that carryover? If you knew there was some projects coming up in
Nope.
future year, okay.
No, that's
So you'd have
kind of
to
the
pay.
beauty of being able to do this. We have to spend it on road construction, but if we need to accumulate funds for a time to have enough, we can.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say one other thing about so you get a whole sense of our budget here in the engineer's office. Don't forget, we also receive farm to market fund money, FM money from that is established by code. It comes from the state of Iowa. That money does not run through any budget here. We are now receiving about $1.5 million every year into our FM fund. That's generally how we pay for our resurfacing projects every year. And that all the bills are paid through by the DOT with that money. So we never touch that money, so to speak. Another portion of money that we receive is federal bridge money, federal bridge funds. And that's typically been running between $500,000 and $800,000 a year. It's been varying over the last 5 years just due to the amount of money that the Federal Highway Administration gives us. And then lastly, probably our smallest pot of money, very unknown every year, is our federal transportation money that we can receive through Intercog, which would be in the form of STBG grants. We really are only receiving one of those grants maybe every 4 years. So maybe we're getting an average of $100,000 a year from that source of funding. So that's really the true picture of where all of our revenue comes from now at this point. And you'll hear more about that when we present our 5-year plan next month. Can I answer any questions about our revenues? Okay. And we are continuing to project a fund balance of over $4 million a year.
I don't know if you want to
Okay.
talk any more about the
Yep.
5-year.
So the 5-year plan is really just consists of a lot of routine replacements, motor graders, dump trucks, CAD computers. I will call your attention to 26 and 27. I've spoken to you at length about a new shop facility. We would like to speak to you more this budget cycle on the construction of a new mechanics facility, a new shop facility out at Longfellow. We have worked with a consultant. We've seen a shop we liked. We have a rough estimate of a square footage. We've gotten some numbers from a consultant, and we feel that we wanted to go ahead and budget that $2.75 million in 2026 and $4.65 million in 2027, and you'll see that on your 5-year plan sheet. We do not have those funds ourselves. That's why we need to have a bigger discussion on the replacement of that facility. And then just in 28 and 29, we need to replace the radios that we use every day every day in our vehicles. Those, we're being told by Raycom that we need to replace those in 28 and 29. So we're budgeting for half the fleet 1 year and then the next half in 29.
Was there did you mention a large or expensive software update for the radios in this year's budget?
Yes, that
Would that still be relevant
24
if we have to replace?
24,000.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. First, the square footage of the building you're considering, what is it?
So we're considering 30,000 square feet.
And in regard to the radios, this year I'd like to see, we have two vendors that provide these services in the county. I'd like, a little off track here, but I'd like a presentation from Motorola one day and Raycom another day. Because I think we're doing a disservice to the taxpayers by not having this presentation. I'm not saying change vendors, but I want to hear from both of them. Because this is a service Motorola can supply too.
Sure, and we'd be certainly.
I
we
doubt
wanna
we'll
hear
get
from
a
them.
quorum with the oversight board because of a lack of participation from the mayors. But if we're not taking any action, we can have the presentations anyway. It just frustrates me that we have such difficulty establishing a quorum for these types of services. They're only important when the county is expected to pay for these expenses.
Can I answer any questions about our 5-year plan?
With regards to the new building and the site work, is the engineering cost on that, is that built into this year's? That's not where's,
That's that $270,000 that I talked about earlier in professional services.
okay, I thought so, okay.
And so, of course, that would be contingent on the whole thing moving ahead.
Yep, okay.
So,
And the 30,000 square feet that you mentioned too is multiple buildings, but total? Or,
it would be one building. I mean, right now we're considering one building that would house mechanic space, 5 double bays. It would house office space. It would have a welding shop, which we currently have today in another building. And then it would have a semi-automated wash bay. So it would be one building.
thank you.
And we'd really like to share with you more about that at a near future meeting.
Yeah. Near future.
Yeah, very near.
Yeah. So,
Other than that, I think that concludes our presentation. Can I answer any questions?
Any other questions, board?
Nope.
All right, thank you, Kathy.
Anything else, Michelle? Okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right, you're going to hear from the auditor's office next.
Okay, does anybody want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick one.
All right, we'll take a brief recess.
Recording stopped.
Yeah, I saw your email. Mr. Chair, and good morning, board, and other distinguished guests.
Recording in progress.
Should I repeat that?
Yeah, yes.
Good morning. As far as our office purpose, I've just listed the primary duties and responsibilities on the sheet that you have, but if I were to come up with a statement, it would be something like, our purpose of our office is to effectively provide these services to the citizens of Black Hawk County and also to Black Hawk County departments and other jurisdictions within the county. Because we do have kind of a dual role in that way. If you look at the statistics that we provided, that first group of statistics about elections, that's a service that we provide directly to the citizens, as you know, a very vital service. But then when you look down lower, like the real estate transfer records, that's a service that is very useful for the citizens, but the main purpose of it is to keep records so that we can levy taxes. And so we have that section there on tax bills calculated. That's done for the county, that's done for all of the property taxing levying bodies within the county. And those taxes are necessary so that you can do what's done in those other categories, the claims processed and the payroll distributed, so that departments within the county can provide the other vital services that county offices provide. So that's our purpose. And now, as you would have seen in an email this morning, before we get into the auditor's portion of the budget, you already had a presentation from Karen Showalter on the elections division of the auditor's office, but there had to be some corrections there, and there's two corrections basically that need to be made. Karen didn't realize when she was preparing the budget that some numbers were carrying over for local elections from the prior year, and she needed to zero those out. So there's $111,100 in revenues for local elections that needs to be taken out, and then that is offset in expenditures on those lines that you see highlighted there. Each one of those is reduced a certain amount so that it comes up to that $111,000, except there is one item on there, the minor equipment item, which shows $30,000. That was the other item that Karen overlooked. There's a need for a software update on our voting machines. It's very important. She already had this is concerning the programming of voting machines for elections. And when we get the ballot information for elections, Karen programs those ballots, and she uses the software that's provided by the vendor. And this is an area where we save money because most counties have the vendor do the programming of the ballots for each election, but Karen's trained to do that, so she does it in-house. And in current year budget, there was an upgrade to the software that she uses when she prepares those ballots, but a related software update needed to be done on all the voting machines so that they would be able to read the information that's provided in the update for her software for preparing the ballot. I hope that I explained that comprehensively. So those are changes that are needed in the elections ballot, the elections budget. So any questions on that? If-
So we can just replace with these sheets what she presented.
Correct.
Really, and that will be
Correct.
good. Yeah.
So moving on to the main auditor's division. The operating budget has some mostly minor changes. Training and education has increased $1,500. You are, if you haven't heard, going to have a new auditor next year. There may be some training. We can't always anticipate exactly what that training will be, but we also want to do some more training for our plat room staff. There's some new training that's been made available in the last couple of years for that. And you may have noticed also that there have been some changes in property tax law that are complex and interesting, and we'll be talking about one of those shortly, but we have constant need for training. The maintenance contract line 0442 increased $1,200. The copy machine, originally the idea was to share that copy machine between a number of offices. It was in the IT budget, and it's being moved to our budget, which has to be somewhere, and it's fine with me if it's in our budget. Then I'm going to skip down to 448, copier supplies. That's just to, Tim Jamison in our office went over past practice and usage and right-sized it with that amount. And then on the next page, miscellaneous repair material, 1034. Well, and also line 0550, they're related. We had a total of $16,500 in the budget for the plat room remodel, and that's being stricken because that's going to be part of the overall project that we're doing for our office elections and et cetera. But I now want to go back to the more substantial increase in printing services and postage, and that's directly related to part of that property tax law change. It's now a requirement that all counties send out a notice prior to the budget. We will be doing it this year, so we're putting it in the budget for next year, but we will also need to make that expenditure this year. We have to gather information. Well, the information will be gathered by the Department of Management from counties, cities, and school districts. They all have a deadline of March 15th to provide to the Department of Management what they think their new levy rate's going to be, and show a comparison between the current year and the proposed next fiscal year rate. And that information, once it's gathered by the Department of Management, will be made available to us. And then we need to send out statements to all taxpayers in the county informing them of these proposed increases so that they have a chance to discuss them with their elected officials before they're approved. Now, this is, we have, I don't know, 70,000 plus property parcels in the county. We don't need to send out that many because a lot of them have ownership by more than one property owned by an individual or group of individuals. So we're able to cut down on the number that go out, but each tax district is going to have its own total number when it comes to different tax levying bodies. And I'm going to try not to go too much in the weeds on this, but we figure there's going to be upwards of 45,000 mailings, and so we are, as I believe probably all other counties in the state, we're contracting this work out. We sent out an RFP. Mr. Trinan reviewed the RFP. We got 3 bids. The low bidder was a local company, Professional Office Services. So this, as you can see, the amount for the printing is much less than the amount of the postage. And the postage is just a pass-through, but it was part of the contract. So anyway, the low bid was about $6,000, I believe, for the printing, $6,020, and the others were like $6,400 and $6,700. But they were all really the same on postage. It's just a pass-through. But this is, this is a state mandate. It's something that we're required to do. And now I kind of have a question for you. That's in the budget for next year, but like I said, this is a new requirement this year. And we have made a decision on who the vendor is, but we're probably going to have to get our budget amended to make this expense this year, and you're going to be responsible for approving that budget amendment. And we discussed whether you would want to be the responsible party for signing the contract. This is a fairly small amount. It's one that from information that I'm getting from around the state, other county auditors are just signing it on their own. They don't think it's significant enough to take to the Board of Supervisors, but I'll leave it in your hands whether you want to sign the contract. If so, we'll get it on the agenda for next Tuesday, but it's something that is very pressing because, we're in February now, and March is coming right up, and there's our preparations that need to be made. So if you just want to give me a kind of a idea of what your
I'm
consensus
okay
is
with
on that.
leaving it in your office. I don't.
Right, the auditors elected.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a significant amount.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll just take care of it. So we can then move on to other parts of the budget.
Sorry, Grant, when you referred to the postage as a pass-through, does that mean the state reimburses for the
No,
postage?
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what I thought. So-
That would be nice, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
But no, I just meant that we are paying the company, we'll be paying POS that amount so that they can pay the postage. It's passing through them, but we're paying for it.
Gotcha.
And as for just thinking about the timing of this mailer, like when, what's kind of the last date at which you can push information out so that we can give them what we think is the most accurate, closest to what the budget levy is going to be.
Well, like I say, the deadline for the jurisdictions to get the information to us is March 15th. The Department of Management is encouraging cities and school districts to get it to us quicker than that because we have to then have it mailed out by March the 20th. We have a 5-day turnaround. And hopefully, since we do have a vendor hired now, we can get all the details worked out so that won't be a problem. But, this is the first time it's done, and I'll tell you what, there are some things on the form here that I think there are some unintended consequences. There are going to be some misunderstandings. We expect to get a lot of feedback from the public on this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they'll have a different form next year. But it's something that's brand new. The whole state, all counties, cities, and school districts are going through it. And, just that part of it indicates part of the potential problem here. Those are the 3 major tax levying bodies for property taxes, but they are not all of them. And this is not going to include what changes there might be for Hawkeye Community College, for the county assessor, for some other much smaller entities. So it might lead to misunderstanding about what people's taxes are actually going to be. So we'll see. But in the meantime, we're just doing as we're told.
It's all the same form that everybody has to send out county by county.
Yeah, I've got a copy of the form right here. 2 pages that I'm sure everybody will read very closely. And, well, you're welcome to look at it.
It sounds brilliant.
Okay, any other questions about our operating expenses? Okay, move on to FTEs. As Michelle mentioned when she presented for the board office, there was a plan to move an FTE from our office when the accountant office fell open to the board office. And that was something that we discussed. We tried to make things work out. It hasn't worked out as we hoped. We would like to have that position back in our budget. I think that it's still a legitimate request to have a position to support the finance director in the board office. So this is something that we've been discussing with Michelle and with Amanda and HR, and it's just not working out well for us to leave that position vacant. So we're talking about changes in the responsibilities to try to make things work well if there were positions, supportive positions in both offices. But I can answer more questions if you have them now or if you want to save them for later. But anyway, we do hope that we can have that position retained in our budget.
So it's not really a new position.
It's not a new position. It was in the current fiscal year budget, but it's been since June that that position has been vacant, and we agreed to try to go a different direction. But we're kind of veering maybe in a totally new direction. But anyway, it's something that we're willing to discuss.
So, and I was just, yeah, my question was just that there was a vacancy then for a period of time, but we're now calling it a new position. So
Well,
we're going from 9 to 10.
I guess
rather than just 9.
that's why it's shown as a new position in here, yes. It's, like I said, it's been vacant since June, but it was originally in the current fiscal year budget, yeah.
So when we, when that position became vacant, Amanda, HR director, I had some conversations at the time with Grant and Jen, and this kind of came about from Billy moving to the treasurer's office. And one of the things I've noticed over my time here working for the county, working in the board office, working for finance directors, is that we don't have any financial professional roles reporting to the finance director. That's been an issue when we've gone to recruit. It's why people have dropped out of the running. I think having 4 finance directors in the last, decade kind of also demonstrates some concern. So I've looked into other models around the state, and Johnson County was one that I was drawn to because they have a very similar setup like what we have today, that they made a shift with their finance director by creating a finance department where they pulled in a position from the auditor's office and a position from the treasurer's office to report to the finance director. So, but I'm not trying to, make any significant changes. It just, the opportunity arose when we had a vacancy to look at possibly restructuring some of our financial reporting structures and workflow. But I definitely appreciate the auditor's office being open to that idea. We have still not backfilled that role. Michelle, Jen, and I interviewed candidates a few months ago, and we had kind of made that change midway through the recruitment period, so we thought we should probably pause, let them get through the audit and the budget to have a little bit better idea for what they felt would be most important for their roles for this position to support. So we'd like to still move forward with fulfilling the job, which, yes, Grant, as he said, we were in agreement that could possibly be explored to come over to the board office to support the finance director, but also fulfill the roles that Jen left when she took the promotion. But I also understand and respect where the auditor's office is coming, that there is just a heavy workload amongst our different financial responsibilities and activities. So
Would this make sense? I know IT, there's, I think Noki is half-time at public health and half-time with IT. Would this position potentially make sense to be split between the two? I tend to prefer these sort of professionalized positions within one department, but I also understand.
yeah, Iowa code's kind of troublesome with that.
Okay.
That makes it a little challenging. Yes, in a perfect world, I would have, to me, you would have a finance department again, where, a lot of our financial support roles would somehow fall under. I think that some departments are always going to need some degree of financial level role, especially with a lot of the processing and budgeting, things like that. But we've talked about that idea. That was one of the ideas that was initially thought about. It's just a matter, I still think we're kind of getting a feel for how that works with Toki and IT, as well as with Derek. He's also a shared position between engineer and conservation. And, I think we all kind of feel at this point there's still enough of a workload that and that's Johnson County, they went from having finance director to budget analyst, they've just hired their third. And it's just such a critical function to the success of our organization, understanding and having the, roles and responsibilities with internal controls and the vast scope that financial activities touch, that we still kind of feel we'd like to try to get 2 positions. But we would certainly be open to an alternative, such as sharing that.
Yeah, because the arrangement we had before with the auditor's office, or that worked really well, was with Billy, that strong support, I think, with maybe other functions too, but particularly audit, right?
Right.
And I was gonna say, or did a large percentage of that.
Yep.
So, yeah, so
And
that
so-
relationship seemed to work really well, or that having that kind of crossover too, but,
And that's kind of, Jen's fulfilled that, just completing her first audit in her new role, and that would be the area that she continues to support in the audit piece. It's a lot of the, I guess I would say the ongoing operations as to the, you have your weekly claims, you have month end, you have quarter end, you have things that need to go on throughout the year to make that audit very clean and to all roll up so that Michelle has that, and Jen to be able to not have so much kind of rework maybe, or additional activities in preparation for the audit. And then, of course, the timing of the audit and the budget are not ideal, right? And especially this year, there's been a lot of pressures with regards to union negotiations and getting in accurate information for the department budgets on the heels of the financial audit also being finished up. And we threw in a time and attendance project too. So, so it was never formalized that the position actually moved from the auditor's office to the board office, but that was the intent, and that's where we kind of landed in an agreement. But and perhaps had we filled the role and they were able to take on some of those duties, maybe, that could have alleviated some of it. But I think it's still just going to be a pretty critical area to have strong succession plans and overlap with regards to financial activities between the board office and the auditor's office.
so is there still exploring kind of conversations on how that could work if that was a shared position, or no, it's just looking?
No, we're open to that, I think. But it's I guess we'd have to kind of figure out how that would look and how that would work. And I worked in the board office as the admin aide. I came to the county with budgeting background and from John Deere, but it always felt a little bit of an odd combination between an admin aide reporting to the finance director, but not having a financial professional report to a finance director. But obviously, Iowa code, there's certain things that the auditor's office, has to do, certain things the treasurer's office has to do, and certain things that this finance director gets pulled into, with regards to the different activities of the board office. And
Well, it
supporting
was
you
one of
all.
those situations, we were very fortunate at the time you were working as the admin aide to have that financial background and experience that you brought from Deere, that you'd had some, all of that experience too. So that doesn't always happen when you have new positions and.
And Grant, he and I have talked quite a bit about that there's always been, it's probably going to forever be somewhat of a moving target, depending on, yes, I mean, you can have some people that bring experience from another county, another city, right? Or someone that comes from the private sector with a lot of experience, but it's still a learning curve to come into a county organization or a local government organization and apply those skills. And we've got a great group across all the offices, but there's probably no shortage of work and only shortage of time.
Yeah, I'd like to see, I mean, we don't know where everything's going to fall in the budget this year, but I'd like to see, a proposal made for this year's budget, just to see, so we can discuss it and see if we can make it work. Because it's something I've thought, since being here, that there really should have been some more support staff in that department.
Yep. And that was some of the feedback we've gotten from candidates over the years, that as they found out that, they're a finance director, but they don't have any support roles, it's just been I think, a valid concern. But, and we've looked at other options. We've looked at the, health department or public health department. They have a vacancy coming up with a financial manager role. But, I will say public health has a tremendous volume of billing, and grant funding, and they, you know, so we have explored other ideas. It's just, we've been kind of looking at the vacancies that have come up and see how we can model this a little differently, structure it differently. But I do appreciate us being able to come forward with a proposal to look at the 2 positions. And then, of course, if we were to get a position, you know, under the finance director, we'd have to kind of think a little bit about the location and things like that. And I know Tavis, Supervisor Hall, talked about kind of that administrative wing. I've been in conversations with Rory about that as well, with regards to if IT vacates to one side of the location as opposed to being split between 2 offices. I think that opens some opportunities to house people a little differently. So, Michelle, did you want to add anything? Grant, anything else?
No. Do you have any other more questions right now? But yeah, we have been talking about different possibilities, and we can work on presenting a proposal. So we can move on to the equipment and the 5-year plan. This shows a couple of things that you've already discussed in fiscal 25, the relocation project that's under ARPA funds. And then the electronic poll books is something that Karen already discussed with you. The other item is the digitization of minutes. We already have a digitization project going on for the transfer books in the plat room. That was kind of a long process in getting a final agreement that I appreciate the work of Tim and Mike Trinan on that. But it has not started yet. We hope to get it done this fiscal year. But as a ongoing process of getting more and more records digitized so that they're more accessible to the public and to internal staff, we would like to digitize the Board of Supervisors minute books, and we have an estimate on that of $40,000. That's based on the number of pages we have in our books, and then compared to a similar digitization process that was done in another county. Any questions about that? Have a few things in future years, fairly insignificant except for the voting machines, which is, of course, in the elections budget. So any questions about capital improvements?
I don't think so. Any questions, Board?
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation.
Thank you, Grant. Hey, Michelle, anything else you wanted to cover today?
Well, I thought maybe I would tack on a little bit to what Grant shared about the mailings, because the state has really changed our budget process this year. Grant's correct that they want us to have estimates to them by March 5th, although they're not required till the 15th. But we are not allowed to even have our first budget hearing until after March 25th, because the legislature wants the auditor's office to mail out these, I don't know, it turns out it's not even a proposed tax bill, so I think it's going to be frustrating. But they want people to get this information and be able to come speak to you either prior to or at our first hearing. So we will want to have our first hearing, I don't know, maybe between March 26th and April 1st, I'm guessing in that time frame. Then we have to publish whatever you choose to at that time. That's got to be in the paper for a clear 10 days before we can actually have our final budget hearing. So that needs to happen, obviously, sometime in April. So that's the schedule we're on. It's very elongated this time around. So next Tuesday, we plan to have, the libraries are going to come make a presentation about their operating request, and I believe we will have the health department finalized. I believe we'll be able to probably do the sheriff's budget a week from today or next Thursday. Then there's the board agency activities. You might remember talking about those last year. And at that point, then we will be done with kind of the department presentation phase, and we'll be able to move into more of the bigger picture items for the budget.
Very good.
Just keep that hearing off the April Fool's Day. Try to avoid it. Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of tempting to.
Sorry.
The notifications thing does sound rather silly how it's set up. That it's not even that it's an estimate. I mean, obviously we want to give the closest estimate we can, but what's to prevent some places saying like, "Oh, we're going to cut your taxes 20% in this estimate," and then they turn around and it's nowhere
I
near
don't
what
think
they're
they'll
gonna
be
do.
able to increase it. That's the trick.
Okay.
So
So we're publishing the max.
So it's an
levy,
estimate
basically.
slash.
it's kind
max
of like
levy.
the maximum.
Okay.
That we've been doing the last few years. It's
yeah.
replacing that.
Sure.
So it's similar. But yeah.
And then just wondering on the cadence, once we get through these first sessions, just trying to keep schedules and whatnot ahead of me. Are we looking at the same cadence of Tuesday, Thursdays? Are we going to look at tacking it
I
on
believe so.
Tuesdays?
Tuesday, Thursdays.
I think we probably
until we
want
get
to,
it done.
at
Okay.
least for a couple weeks. I mean,
Okay.
then we'll just,
For now.
it's really, kind of depend on what your feelings are, what more you want us to look at, so. But I think it would be a good idea to stick with that for a little bit yet.
Okay.
You said the sheriff you thought would be next Thursday?
I'm hoping so. We do not have everything quite finalized yet.
Okay.
but-
All right. Well, if there's nothing else for it, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, yeah, I was gonna say.